So tonight's agenda, I want to take about probably 30 minutes to give you a presentation, give you an introduction to the comprehensive plan, which is what we're here for. We are updating the 2015 comprehensive plan. It was called the Longview, very fitting because we want to be able to look 10, 20 years into the future of what do we want the city to be. So, first of all, what is a comprehensive plan? Can I get a show of hands for anyone who's worked on the comprehensive plan in the past? Okay, there's a good number of folks. I saw some familiar faces walking in, and that's great. But I know a lot of the average citizens, what's a comprehensive plan? What is it? What does it matter to me? So, if you were going to go start a business, you would probably want to have a business plan. You would want to understand, what are my goals, what do I want to achieve, and how am I going to get there? If you're going to go build a house, most likely you're going to have a set of blueprints, right, that tells you what I want to build and how I want to build it. Can you build a house without blueprints? You can, but it may not all come together perfectly, right? And it's probably going to take a lot longer to do it. So the comprehensive plan is that blueprint. It is what your city uses to be able to think through long-term decisions on what are we going to do with our facilities, our parks, our roads, our infrastructure, the land uses. How do we utilize the land? Where do the city limits grow? All of those things that help define the things that a city does, that's what a comprehensive plan is. In Texas, the part of the local government code allows us the authority to do a comprehensive plan. There's a couple of things in the Texas local government code that address this. One is zoning, one is subdivision, and then the comprehensive plan. So the main part of the focus of the comprehensive plan is for health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. So the plan itself is a document. It is to guide you for 10 to 20 years. It's to help make decisions for the future. It's what the city bases its policies after. It's also what helps base zoning when you're making zoning decisions. It is important to note that the comprehensive plan is not the zoning ordinance. Those are two different things. You're going to hear tonight me talk about future land use plan. Land use is our ideal vision of what we want something to look like. The zoning is what helps enforce that. So when you have zoning on a property or you make zoning decisions or you're changing land use, then the comprehensive plan is often what the city's going to look at to say, is this a good idea? Is this what we want? So that's it's important. It's not a final rigid answer. There are things that change. As we know, COVID changed a lot of things about how we do things. So you never really know certain things like that. So it's not rigid, but it is important to follow as much as possible. So the things that inform a comprehensive plan. Number one, it is a community. This plan is for you. It is built by you. It is important to get your input. So community input is a real key important. Of course, as us as consultants that do this a lot of different places, we can certainly give you a lot of best practices and trends and look at what things are going on. We also have a comprehensive plan advisory committee that I'll talk about here in a moment that's also helping us. So all those go together to help put together this document, and then out of that document comes specific things that you need to do. For example, the Unified Development Code that I mentioned earlier, that was a new thing, and that was a direct impact of your last comprehensive plan. Follow-up small area plans, decisions that you make on land use, those are all things that inform that. So back in 2015, I was real lucky to be a part of that. We did a massive effort, a lot of input, a lot of different meetings, a lot of input to understand what's important to the city of Longview. And that's how we put together this document. We had 7 different committee meetings and then some subcommittee meetings. We had a lot of different people working on different things, and it was a fantastic process. But I did want to highlight just some of the successes of the last plan, because I know sometimes people ask, why are we spending money to do this? You know, what's important about this? If you think about it, when a building gets built, it's usually there 30, 40 years. When a road gets built, it's usually there for a long time. So you have to spend a little bit of money to make those, to think about that and to think about the plans that you want, because when some things get done, they're done for a while. And so those are sometimes lasting decisions, and so we want to make sure we're making good decisions. So some of the successes of the last plan. Following the plan and some of the recommendations, there was a small area plan done for downtown. Y'all, there's a lot of changes that have been made in downtown since the last time I was here. It's phenomenal. It's really cool to see some of those, and part of those were outcome of that small area plan. We did a plan on the I-20 corridor. You can't see all of those today. I know some of those things are still a work in progress that we would like to see, but what you will be able to see soon is a new entry monument right at the split of Estes and High. There's some things going in, a new monument. That's part of recommendations from that plan. There's going to be a complete street along Mauberley all the way up to downtown with adding sidewalks and so on. That's going to be a direct impact of the plan. Your Unified Development Code, like it or not, there's just certain things that it was kind of interesting in the last time we met. People wanted to see more bikes. They wanted to see more code enforcement. Y'all didn't have a property maintenance code in place. You didn't really have the teeth to be able to do some of the things that you wanted to achieve. And so many of those things have been accomplished. Demolished dilapidated buildings, that's in process, but some of those have happened. Some of your public facilities, your fire station, future expansion of City Hall, some of those things that needed to be done just based on your growth over time, those are in the works. So there's been a lot done. I mean, I will tell you, of all the items that we had 27 top priority items, and all of these that have check marks are things that are either done or they're in progress. They're things that have been worked. So that's phenomenal. That's kudos to you guys for having a community, for having staff, for having elected officials that have supported this, and that have been able to see many of those things through to fruition. And again, there is a list over here of some of those higher priority items that were picked last time, and you can see the status of that. So kudos to all that. So what's next? What's next? What do we need to add to that list? What are those things? Because you have done such a good job, then really our purpose here is to find out what are the new things that we need to be doing? What do we need to be focusing on with the dollars that we have? We know we can't do everything. This was the highest priority list of 27 things. The reality is, if you look at the plan itself, there's probably hundreds of things to do, and we know we don't always have the dollars to do all of that, so then it becomes down to prioritizing. So that's one of the things, again, that we want to get your input on. So let me talk a little bit more specifically about the project itself and what we're going to be undertaking. So for the 2024 plan that we hope to have next year, we're going to be working on this over the next year, we're doing a focused update on the future land use and the neighborhood livability. And I'll explain what those are. And some of the reasons that we're only focusing on that is because there's other things that are being done outside of the planning effort. For example, your parks plan. If any of you were involved in doing the parks plan, that's something that's being done. The MPO is doing a transportation plan. So there's some other things that are already being done outside, and so we're not duplicating, and really we're just taking those efforts and building those together with what we are in this plan. So what we're focusing on are these two things. So what the chapters of the report, if anybody has ever opened up your just give me one person opened up the comprehensive plan and read it. Oh, I see some hands. That's good. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. So this new plan, they'll have 5 chapters to it. We'll have a community snapshot, and that's really just looking at your demographics and kind of some of the things that informs us of your population today. What are some of the trends that we're seeing today to help us inform land uses? The vision, goals, and objectives, we went through a significant effort the last time to come up with what is our vision for this city. And a lot of citizen input wrapped around that. So, I mean, I felt really, really good. I think you guys did one of the best vision statement, the way it was structured last time. I was really impressed. And a lot of those are still good. So we're not going to reinvent the wheel, but we do want to be able to take a look at that, make sure that that's still valid, and that is still the direction that you want to go. Future land use will be a chapter in this. Neighborhood livability and implementation will be the chapters. So in other words, we're not going to have a parks chapter, a transportation chapter, or economic development, because I know LEDCO's doing a lot of those things. However, that doesn't mean if something comes up that we need to really know, it's okay. I mean, like, we're going to try to fold those in, because I know in many ways land use and transportation go hand in hand. It's just we might, if we point you to the direction of look at what we've already got, it's because some of these plans are already in process. So I mentioned the very first thing that we do is just look at the community snapshot. Look at where you are today. What are some of the trends that's different from Longview compared to other cities or compared to the state of Texas? But I will tell you some of the things, when you look at the age distribution of Longview, if you can see this chart, the black dashed lines is the state of Texas. That's the average. The blue bars are Longview. And so some of the observations from this, if you look from probably about 60 and above, you have a larger population, 60 and above, than the average, okay? What does that tell us? You've got more of a retiring community. You have a lot that are reaching kind of the baby boomer age, that are reaching that retirement age. When you look down in that, say, 59 to 39 age, you're less than the average. So all that workforce, kind of that workforce age from, 40 to 60, you have less folks there. So there's some things that starts to inform of how do we bring more workforce here? How do we get that population of those that are in businesses today? How do we backfill those that may be approaching retirement age? When you look down at the 30 to 20 age, you got a little bit more than average. And sometimes that's normal if you have a college, and I know you have several with Laterno and Kilgore and some of the college. When you have that, the question then that we have is, are we losing college students? Are people coming here, going to school, and then they're moving elsewhere? And how do we build things within the community that make people want to stay? So that's one of the questions. And again, there's just other takeaways looking at, younger age and stuff. Those are things that we want to understand, and see if there's any trends, because some of that does go back to livability and quality of life. You think about it, what are the things that make you want to move to a city? What are those things that matter to you? And if those things aren't there, then you may move elsewhere to get those. So those are some of the key takeaways. I think another key takeaway, when we just kind of look at income, we look at housing, we look at things like that, your unemployment rate has decreased a little bit since the last plan. So that's great. I mean, it's marginal, but that's great to see that come down. One of the key things is 67% of your workforce makes less than $75,000. So, thinking about what are those things that can contribute or raise incomes or make sure that we're meeting the population needs, affordable housing and things like that, just knowing those numbers and making sure that we're meeting those needs. Other housing statistics that we look at when we kind of look at the community snapshot is just looking at how much of your housing is owner occupied, how much of it is vacant. You've had to shift toward higher values of housing, but I think that's something that we probably say across the nation, it feels like right now, that's increasing. But you do have 11% 40% of your vacant housing. And so how do we fill that, or what are those needs that might be missing? You have 47% that are renter occupied, which is a little bit higher than average. And so looking at, owner occupancy and how do we do that? So those are just things that we look at just to understand, kind of some trends going on. So the next part is that vision statement. And when you look at this, your vision statement of 2015, this would be the only slide in here I read, and it's probably the only one you can read on your slide. But to be a premier community, promoting education, business opportunities, and cultural diversity, capitalizing on our heritage and natural beauty while focusing on families, healthy living, and creating a safe, welcoming environment that attracts vibrant people to call Longview home. It's a lot of words, but what I absolutely loved about this vision statement is in the last plan, we took each one of those words and we broke it down and came up with objectives and strategies of what does it mean to be a premier community? What does it mean to have good education and focus on family and healthy living and safe and welcoming? And so each of the plans, there's break down each of those words, and then we have a goal. We have a goal for each of those, and then we have objectives. So the next piece of this will be the future land use plan. And so in simplest terms, to get rid of the planning jargon, it's how do you use your land? Do you use it for residential? Do you use it for commercial or mixed use development? If you do have it for residential, how much of that is for large lot single family, for 2-acre lots or 1-acre lot? Or is it townhomes? Or is it apartments? Or is it, what's the use of that land and what should that be for? The market drives a lot of things, and so there's needs, and we're big believers that, market is important and the market's going to kind of do what it needs to do, but as terms of where we can guide and influence decisions, that's what the land use plan does. And so looking at where your future residential is and what's a breakdown of that, and where we could see different types of houses, what we need, what might be missing. I just graduated, or my last kid just moved off to college. I'm downsizing right now. I'm moving and I'm downsizing in something smaller because I'm in that sweet spot of I don't have grandkids yet, and yet all my kids are getting old and out of the house, and I don't want to take care of everything. So I'm in that spot. You may be in a different spot, where you've got a growing family and you need something, but we want to look at all the residential components and where are we missing. My daughter wants to live in a downtown environment. They want the high rise. They want mixed use development. So just thinking through what are we missing here in Longview. Thinking about retail, do we have too much retail? Do we have empty places of retail where maybe it shouldn't be retail anymore? Or maybe we need more retail. Maybe we need more commercial. Do we need more industrial? That's a big trend right now. Used to, industrial was a bad word, but now with all the logistics and Amazon and all that, industrial's become, much more important to us in many ways. So thinking about those uses and what do we need more or less of and where they go, that's the kind of things that we're asking you. That's the kind of questions that we want answered. And then the where does that go? Where are the areas that you live in an area and you're just really missing something, and how do we redevelop? So one of the key things that's important about this is the darker color areas, and you'll see this over here on the land use map, is the city limits. When we looked at this last time, you had a very large ETJ where we were looking at, and Longview historically has been able to annex areas within the city. Our legislation has changed some of that, where we can no longer annex without, you can to some in certain points, but you can't just go arbitrarily move that boundary and annex. So then it causes us to think, okay, if we're going to grow as a city, how do we grow within the city limits that we currently have? And how do we think about redevelopment and reuse of our lands? So those are the types of questions that we're asking. When we talk about neighborhood and community livability, If you would just think, what makes me love my neighborhood? What makes me want to live here? That's really what we're asking. What is it that makes me want to be where I am? That's the kind of questions that are important to us in terms of amenities and, parks and sidewalks and, open spaces and all those different things that make your place great. That's what we want to know. And if it's not great, we want to hear how we can better that. So looking at that and cleaning those areas up. And then the very last area that we have is implementation. So great vision is awesome, but at the end of the day, we want to know what are the steps that we can take towards that. And so that's really, again, we're going to take all the input that we hear from you all, from our committee. We've got an online survey. We're going to take all that and we'll put those together and we'll roll that up in an implementation plan that identifies specific action and tries to tie time frame to it. Now, sometimes that's just subject to funding of when those things happen, but it's important to look at that. I do want to give a shout out to our CPAC. If you're on the planning committee, can you raise your hand? I know we have several folks here. They probably didn't know I was going to call them out and make them raise their hand, but I do think it's important to know that, we've got citizens that are serving on this committee, that they're going to be guiding us, but then also it's a conduit to you. If you have ideas that you think of outside of tonight, this committee we're going to be talking to them. Coming up here in a couple of months, we'll be coming back to them. So we would love to hear your feedback, but then also just know that you can reach out to any of the committee members because we want them to help be ambassadors. I use Longview as an example almost everywhere I go because the last committee we had was so active, and I thought they did such a fantastic job of shepherding through some of the recommendations that they really became ambassadors of the plan, and so that's really what we hope to see in this one. So this is our overall schedule. Tonight, we kicked off the plan with city staff. 2 months ago, we've been working on the community snapshot. We've been updating some of the maps that we have. And then earlier today, we met with the CPAC. And so when we take all the information that we hear in this next month or so of input, then we're going to be drafting some recommendations for those 3 chapters that I mentioned. We'll come back to that CPAC around that September-October timeframe. And then again in December and January, and probably have another meeting like tonight where we bring it back to the general public to be able to, so that you all get the final say of looking at everything that we have within that before we go to any kind of P&Z and council. So we hope to wrap up this entire plan by March of 2024. So it's a condensed version of what we did back in 2015 because again, I think so many of the things are good, but at the same time, I think it's real important because there's a lot that's changed. We have choices to be able to work from home now, and where you work where you live is really important, and things that have changed just within our industry and that are driving some of the things in this. So everybody has permission to take out their phone right now. If you want to take a snapshot of this QR code, it will take you to a website. You can also just go to LongviewTexas.gov/plan. What that will do is it will tell you a little bit about the plan, but most importantly, there is a survey on there. Again, it's a link that you can copy, share, send to others. The more input we get, the better off your plan's going to be because it's driven by the citizens, and that's really important to us. Okay, well, guys, I thank you all. I love the good turnout again. I appreciate you being here. Would love your input. Come see us all at the board and tell us what you think. So thank you.